Hi, it's Wednesday, the 15th of July. It's 3 o'clock. Welcome to Together Unlocked, brought to you as always by Together 2012, the disability arts organisation based in the London Borough of Newham, which was, of course, the main host borough for the Olympics and Paralympics. I'm Jude Gosling. I'm an artist and artistic director of Together 2012. With me in my East London studio, indeed, for the duration, is the artist Julie Newman, who's also the chair of Together 2012. We'll be coming back to us in a minute to do some audio description, but first over to the other end of our very long virtual sofa to the West Midlands for some introductions and audio description there.
Well, good afternoon. Hi, I'm Robin Surgener. I'm Business Director at Together 2012, also known as Angry Fish as an artist. I am on the other end of the very, very long virtual sofa, which I've as yet to find any money behind, which is quite disappointing. We're up here in Sutton Coldfield. Today I am still sporting increasingly long, white, silvery hair. But I like it. I've decided I like it. No rimmed, silver armed glasses. My 5 o'clock shadow is now quite a lot longer than that and darker, but hey. And I am wearing a grey t shirt which says Rolling Stones across the upper part of the chest. And then it is logoed with the very famous Rolling Stones kind of massive lips picture. So it's a huge pair of lips with a tongue sticking out and a Union Jack painted on the tongue.
I am Josh Surgener. I'm also one of the hosts of Together TV, and I am a doctoral research student. I've got increasingly long, swept over blonde hair, and I am wearing a maroon or claret. I'm sure Julie can correct me on the actual shade. T-shirt that repping where I do my PhD. It says Sheffield Hallam University in very large letters right across the front.
I think claret's probably a good colour.
I think so.
I've never really drunk claret, so that in itself is a kind of interesting question. But do they describe the West Ham uniforms as claret?
Yeah.
I'd say it's pretty claret
Yeah,
then.
I think it's claret.
My hair isn't really claret, more carrot. It's a self-inflicted hennaed corona crop. I've got black rimmed glasses, I've got black wrist braces, I've got silver jewelry, and I've got a green t-shirt that across it in pink in a sort of cut out, slightly illegible fashion it says equal. What about you, Julie?
I don't have a t-shirt that says anything. I'm wearing a red polo shirt at the moment. I have dark glasses, dark rimmed rather, beg your pardon, and I have silver and gold hair. I just wanted to say, did you have a good birthday on Monday?
I did. I thank you. I can't remember if I mentioned, but I got a new watch and an Apple Watch, which I'm slowly beginning to get to the bottom of. But it's really, really, as a sports person and trying to do training at home, I'm finding it's got this tracker app that tells you, and the Apple Watch, actually, this is a really important fact, counts wheelchair pushes.
Brilliant.
So if you're a wheelchair user, instead of steps, you do wheelchair pushes. So that's kind of really cool, and and then picks up on the extra exercise and stuff like that. So yeah, I've all Monday night, even when we were doing the land work, I'm sitting there going, light up, oh yeah, light up, oh yeah, cool.
So, for the rest of us who are so jealous we can barely speak and we will never have Apple Watches, we will move swiftly on. On a Wednesday, we have several regular features. These include Virtual Nature Watch with Precious Newman, where Julie's assistant's dog goes out into the yard to show us how the world is looking and how much it's changed in the last week. We have our Clockwork Paralympics, where we race toys for the right of one of our teddy bears to wear a medal. The reason we have the teddy bears is we're also taking part in the virtual worldwide teddy bear hunt. We have Josh almost said Vosh on virtual gaming and sport. and we have lots and lots and lots of poetry because today is our pop-up poetry club day, and this morning, almost for the first time since lockdown, we were able to run a successful phone-based session of our pop-up poetry
Oh,
club.
fantastic.
So, just for anybody who's joined us, our club's program is our year round outreach program. It's completely free, like everything else we do. The clubs are targeted at disabled people and whoever you'd like to bring with you. And they're usually held on a weekday morning in East Ham. We have an art club, the pop up poetry club, we have a dance club, we have a music club, we have a photographers and filmmakers club. And the Pop Up Poetry Club is one of those clubs that has finally, because of the technological problems, transferred successfully to a phone based system. Most of our participants don't have access to the internet at all, or they don't have access to enough data. So we haven't been able to run these sessions by Zoom, as I know some people have. What we're doing instead is we're delivering a personalized package of creative support. In a way, we're helping people to map out an entire creative development program for themselves at home. We're supporting that with phone calls to be able to deal with any problems that people are having around benefits, housing, services, healthcare. But this was just great because it's only the second club that we've been able to get up and running again where people can come together. The other club is our Zoom Together, which is on the first Thursday evening of each month. And that's for now replacing our real life poetry cafes and music clubs, which usually take place on a Friday night. So, how did it go, Julie?
It was lovely. It was so good to hear everybody's voices. And I think, without exception, everybody was really pleased to be part of it and to be writing again and being able to share their poems and really enjoying the feedback as they read out their new creations today, but also some read out poems that they had written previously, and some read out poems such as I did that I had found that was suiting the theme for today, which was dreams.
And can you just tell us, for anybody who doesn't know, how the club works? You know, the sort of structure of it now it's phone based.
Yeah, now we know how it works as well, which is great. It starts off. Anybody wanting to take part is linked in via our engagement support officer, Noel, and he phones people up. Really, he starts phoning people up from about 10:15. You know, he phones up Alison Marchant, who leads the group, and myself, and Taylor, who is our volunteer, so that we're ready to go. And also, if there's any problems, it shows up straight away, so we can get them sorted. He then calls people in, and everybody sort of says, "Hello, how are you? How nice to speak to you," etc., etc. And at 10:30 promptly, Alison starts us off by facilitating the club itself and suggesting that we pick up the theme that she had highlighted for us, in this case, dreams, and everybody, one by one, read out a poem on that theme or related to that theme in some way. And everybody got feedback so that we get our heads around the concept of poetry writing and some sort of direction that we're moving in. We then all hang up, and we have half an hour in which to write our own response to the work that's been read out. Um, and then Noel starts phoning us back, and there's the same thing as the previous session. He phones Alison, myself, Taylor first, and then brings everybody else back. By which time everybody's raring to read their poems and their work, and it's a very happy and very supportive group. Um, I've always been impressed at the standard of poetry writing, even if it's just a few words. It's usually absolutely spot on, um, and it's everybody's just so kind and so supportive. There's uh, no side to anybody. It's exactly, as what you would want, really.
I was
And
going to say, how do people respond to having to create something or not having to, being asked to create something in a half-hour window.
So just
Well,
get on and do it.
yes. Well, I think it's worth saying we started our clubs along with Together 2012 as an organisation in March 2013. We've been running the poetry club pretty much ever since, because initially we had some funding for that from, I think it was the People's Health Code Lottery, one of the trusts that sounds very like that, to which we are still very appreciative, because that allowed us to buy a sort of library of poetry books to start us off with. And it's how we've been running it for a long time. So in real life, or this is real life, of course, previously, I should say, we would turn up, have a cup of tea about 10:30, randomly select a book from the poetry shelves, randomly go through it while we had some biscuits, find a poem, and then we would read that poem out. So we would all share a poem that we would just find. We might do some voice exercises, some breathing exercises, but more likely we then just select a topic, sit down and write, have more tea and coffee and more biscuits, and then share it at the end. I think it's been very successful. I've got a very large number of poems that I've written when I've been in charge of the poetry club that would never have seen light of day otherwise. But I think there's usually also techniques by having a theme. I think that helps. Quite often, if people need inspiration, we've done things like take the poems that people have read to start with and say selected a line or selected some words out of it and used them. So there's different techniques. I think one of the things to point out is, of course, a phone group is not accessible to everybody, and that's the difficulty that we've got with all of our activities. We have a very, very high proportion of our regulars at the Poetry Club who don't have broadband, and indeed, some only have landlines. But we are in the process of applying for more funding for Palantype, more funding for BSL. What I'm hoping to do is to set up a second club, which I will lead on Zoom, if and only if we can get the Palantype, because we've already had 2 inquiries from deaf poets. And I've had to explain that because these people are just not included in any of the digital offer, that we've had to do this as a first step. And as we said on Monday, it has literally taken 3.5 months for anybody to be able to design us a system where we can just have a group conference call that we pay for. Because of course that's critical as well. If you look at the charges, you can join in things like GoToMeeting by phone, but it's very, very expensive, and there's a very limited number of people that you can add to a group call from the organisers' end. So what we're going to do in a little bit is read some of the poems that were written this morning. But first of all, we've got some chat topics, and I know in particular you wanted to talk to us about Harvey Price, Katie Price, and her campaign against trolling on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm never too sure about people who suddenly appear out of nowhere and are stars and seem to have the capacity to earn a lot of money. And sometimes they're connected to reality shows, sometimes they're connected to modeling or some form of singing, songwriting, something that I'm not particularly involved with. But with Katie Price, I always think, she came along as Jordan. That was her work name. And she came to my attention really sort of very positively when she 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 was able to demonstrate her public support for her disabled son Harvey. Um, and what's more, she did more than publicly support him. She demonstrated over and over and over again through Twitter, through Instagram, through Facebook, etc., how much he was an integral part of the family and how important he was. And his father, it seems, never really was part of that. But various relationships that Katie has had has always included Harvey, which has been lovely. Um, Harvey is has, although he's partially sighted, has always been very good at drawing, and he enjoyed, particularly when he was younger, he enjoyed drawing things like frogs, and they were really quite beautiful, and he used to share them. But he got trolled very, very badly by nasty, hostile viciousness. And Katie just carried on doing what she's always done, which is to support him and say, hang on, this isn't right. I'm going to do something about it. So, for the last couple of years, she's been progressing something called Harvey's Law, which is actually going to be a legal tool, I suppose, to stop vicious trolling on the internet, and particularly for people who might be particularly vulnerable to that.
I mean, I'm always horrified at the level of trolling that a lot of very well known disabled people get. I don't, and I think it's partly because possibly I come across as not caring, but of course, everybody cares if you get that level of abuse. I was speaking at an event, I think it was a diversity Pride Month themed event, doing some corporate training a couple of years ago. And there was a relatively young disabled actor who's been on one of the soaps, and the abuse she started talking about that she got on a daily basis was just, just absolutely appalling. I trained initially and worked for about the first 15 years of my career as a journalist, and I've still never been able to understand why the standards on social media are not the same as the standards for the rest of the media. You can take a print publication like The Guardian or The Mirror, you can put it online, it's still subject to the same laws. But somebody publishes what is effectively their own magazine, they can say whatever they like, and they can use these platforms like Twitter and Facebook and say whatever they like. I think the reason we were bringing it up is we also wanted to send Harvey all our best wishes. He's been in intensive care for 2 or 3 days now, which again is the kind of thing that unfortunately, as you know yourselves, families with disabled people often go through. And the COVID crisis is no different. People have seen their young people going in and out of hospital, in and out of different services. It must be so difficult when you, as a parent, can't go in there. And again, I think she's already mentioned that even with video calls, if you have a disabled young person who's isolated somewhere like intensive care, which is already very frightening, we've heard a lot about that during COVID, haven't we? About how people hallucinate, how it can be very frightening, the impact of the drugs. So we want to say, get well soon, Harvey. And Katie, we are right behind you. And, I just, again, I don't think these things should be forgotten about just because we have an economic crisis and a health crisis. That kind of level of nastiness, and particularly when so many people like ourselves are shielding, not having the same degree of social support, I think it's more important than ever that people are able to be on the internet without just being targeted and abused by total strangers. If somebody calls a name in the street, which they occasionally did, I can turn around and that's a criminal act. Surely it ought to be the same if somebody does that to us on a Twitter. So we've done all of that talking. So let's give you the final word in West Midlands.
Well, I mean, I support absolutely everything you said, and I think the fact that she has always been so positive um, about having a son, and at the bottom line, that's what matters. He's her son, and because I know of so Bob Monkhouse, for example, who isn't with us anymore, but was a massively famous comedian, through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and probably 90s. Um, had a son with cerebral palsy who lived in a home, and nobody ever, or hardly anyone, knew he ever even had a son. And it's sort of, you know, it's not protecting them; it's hiding them. And I think that for her, I think, I mean, particularly because she inhabits a world that is so where appearance and credibility of how you look, how you behave is so important. That that just actually makes what she does for Harvey even stronger. And I totally agree that when I was growing up, I got called lots of names, not least by Josh because I wasn't great. No, but in all seriousness, and it's really hurtful. But you're there, you can challenge them. You know, Someone writes something on a wall, maybe not, But going back to those times, you could challenge it, and it, like as you said, if it's in a one-to-one, a public situation, then it's a hate crime. Whereas the sort of the anonymity that the internet offers is just utterly wrong. And it's still, I just don't understand what anybody gets from it. That there is no rationale that makes somebody feel good about what they've done. So I really don't understand it. Over to you, Josh. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, through we've talked, especially in lockdown, about how great the internet is and it connects everybody. That is the downside. And yes, it can be anonymous. You can just create an account on a whim and some of the things that I follow a lot of sports news and gaming things, and not necessarily disabled people, but some of the things that kind of female sports journalists and female kind of games industry people have to put up with is just disgusting. It's absolutely sickening, some of the things that get said. It was in the news earlier this week that some 12-year-old had been sending racist messages to a footballer, and they arrested him. And I thought, good.
Yeah.
We need to change, and people need to learn that just because you're 5,000 miles away, or doesn't mean that you can still be a terrible human being, and there needs to be consequences for it.
Or indeed, if you're in the same school, because of course, for young people, cyberbullying is a massive issue. I'm going to move it on now because I think we need to in terms of time. But I just wanted to repeat the advice that was given very strongly earlier in the year. If somebody trolls you, block them. Do not respond. And, that advice is very simple, but it's really important. Don't respond. Don't take any notice. Block them so you can't see any more messages from that person in the future. And if they keep going to the trouble of setting up new accounts, just keep blocking those. Think how much time they're wasting. So, shall we read a few poems at this moment in time? Because we've had several sent in, including, I know Julie wrote one this morning, but I'm going to kick off, I think, with a poem called My Balcony. And this is by Pizer Malik. And we've seen Pizer a number of occasions because she's a member of ACT Up Newham. ACT Up Newham are our associate drama company. They're working every week, rehearsing and producing work over Zoom. And indeed, they sent me another video this morning that we will see on Friday. But in the meantime, this is Pizer, My Balcony. 6 by 12 feet, enough to look out and greet. Hi everyone, you look so sweet. I get the smile back, the look of shared happiness intact. Yes, we're on the right track. Smiling and greeting to escape loneliness, to forgive and forget sadness. My balcony is my little colony. It is just enough to keep me merry. Looking at the sunflower swaying, pink lily opening, red roses blooming, watching neighbours going, waving, have a good evening, everybody. Regards from my cute balcony. Thank you, Pizer.
Cool.
So, Julie, shall we hear yours?
Can do. I was going to read Alison's actually. I had a text with Duncan's on, but I'll put that up on the website after. This is Alison's, and she said it was more of a stream of consciousness than an effort to write a rhyming poem, which I think is perfectly acceptable. This is Alison Marchant. Dream of a portrait. I dreamed of a woman as if in a flickering Super 8 film, standing there in a tattered coat with a fur collar. The year 1940 flickered across the film frame in bold text. She stood on an empty battlefield where I was a tiny child collecting stones which I passed to her one by one. She had waited a long time and had a very hard life. I think she was my great-grandmother standing there after looking for her son lost in battle.
Well, that was great, Alison. Well, I'll read another one and then we'll come back finally to Julie's from this morning. So, this is from one of our volunteers, Taylor Henville, and it's called Feathers on the Wind. A dream is like a feather on the wind, it can drift anywhere, floating in your mind. The wind of possibility can raise a dream to the sky, bringing it clear into view in your mind's eye. But the rumbling threat of gloom can knock a dream off course. Negativity may rain down and conceal a dream in the mud. And life, like snowfall, can freeze the dream for a time. But the sunny breeze can always come back, and the dream begins to fly again, until the dream, like a feather, floats by and lands at your feet, waiting for you to pick it up and start again. I thought that was great. Thank you, Taylor. And in due course, we do hope to be recording people reading their poems so that they can bring them to you for themselves. But in the meantime, here's Julie doing it for herself.
Doing it for myself, that's right. I don't often write poems, and I suppose because of at the moment my present close contact with the poetry club, I was very inspired by everybody this morning, and I wrote Celestial Homesickness. My eyes closed, my mind drifted as I listened to the song of the shipping forecast, familiar names of unknown places carrying me away to dreams within dreams. I swam with the stars and danced on the moon, my feet not heavy, my spirit light enough to carry me up and over the brightness of countless constellations, diving in and out of meteor tails, delighting in the spark that light the endless night. And then I played with asteroids, relentless in their pursuit of the path that leads nowhere, looking for partners in their timeless flight around the planets. As I awoke from the dream within the dream, I reached back to the stars and the endless dance, longing again to feel the joy of the light and the wonderful belonging in the night of endless dreams, to join in the dance and play with the stars, forever part of the harmonics that form, calling to all but unheard by many, the glorious song of the universe. That's me.
That was lovely. Thank you, Julie.
Cool.
So, what I'm just going to do next is put on a short video that explains better than we could if we were doing it off the cuff. A bit more about our Join In From Home programme, including the poetry options to join in from home. All of our Join In From Home programme is available on our website www.together2012.org.uk, and this will just tell you more about it. Together 2012 is running a Join In From Home programme from our website together2012.org.uk. Click on the link at the top of the page, Join In From Home, to go straight to the main page where you have a wide range of accessible, inclusive creative activities, mostly using things that you would already have at home. At the top of the page and throughout the pages, you will also see videos in British Sign Language to translate the site for deaf people. These videos can also be useful if you have difficulties reading and you simply want to hear more of the content. The Join In From Home programme is based on the activities that we would usually be running in East London. All of our activities can be enjoyed by families at home, but we also have some of our favourite activities here from our family activity days, which we usually hold in the school holidays. Card making with pens, stickers and paper is also popular. You can show someone you're thinking of them by making them a special card, and if it can't be delivered safely, then send a photograph with a personal message or keep it till later. Here we have instructions for making a sock puppet, a storage jar or night light, or a lunchbox or storage box, all of which are really popular with our family activity days. And you can click on each of these links to get full instructions. So with the sock puppet, for example, you have lots of instructions with photographs to show you exactly what to do. Same with the storage jar. And same with the lunchbox or storage box. And you can see how effective it is just to use very, very simple techniques. Everyone is completely unique. The Pop-Up Poetry Club meets on a Wednesday morning. We also run regular poetry projects and poetry cafes. We're inviting you to write or sign a poem on the theme of Together and send it to us to share on social media. We're also going to be publishing an anthology of the Together poems in November, and everybody who contributes will get a copy of the physical book. And in fact, Richard Downes, who is very well known on the disability arts poetry scene and, among other things, runs the Pandemics, has sent us a video poem on the subject of Together, and we're going to hear that at the end of the show. But next, it is time for Virtual Nature Watch, where, given that our garden is too small to socially distance and we're on the shielding list and can't go out, we send the dog out instead to send us back some news. She was looking in particular this lunchtime at the weather, wasn't she, Julie? Why is that?
Well, she was indeed. She was wondering whether it was going to rain or whether the sun was going to shine, because today is Happy St. Swithin's Day. St. Swithin was a saint who is now associated with drought and trying to have the miracle of removing drought. But he's buried in Winchester Cathedral. And there was a sort of, I think, 17th century sort of fable that grew up about if it rained or the sun shone today, it would stay like that for the next 40 days. Over time, this has been disproved many, many times.
Surely not.
And the closest it came was, I think, actually London, where it rained for 30 days in the 40. But generally speaking, it doesn't really hold true. But it's an interesting old story. I think the weather was so undecided today that poor old Precious was very undecided about the whole business. And in fact, she went out a couple of times and with much the same result. There was great puzzlement on the part of the puppy.
I mean, I hope it's true, and I'm really hoping for not a very hot summer indeed, just because it gets so hot in East London, and not being able to open all the windows and not being able to go out is not really ideal. Although, having said that, if it's really hot, I don't go out anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. I think only English people do. I mean, I was having a conversation with a taxi driver last summer who just couldn't stop laughing because he said where he came from, if it's very hot, you cover your skin up to prevent skin cancer and you put up a brolly to stop sunstroke. And we fling all our clothes off, head for the nearest beach, and judging by the more recent photos of the bank holiday, go absolutely mad. Which Precious probably would too. But let's see what she's been up to.
You've rearranged your garden as well, haven't you, Jude?
Yes, she's checking out. I think I said last week I was very proud of myself managing to put down some new tiles, although in fact they're just literally slotted in. She still thinks she can get underneath my shed, but she can't. She also thinks there's people living under the shed, and actually I have checked loads of times. There are no rodents whatsoever, but good thing that she's patrolling. She's just seen that I've moved my garden seat, which is probably confusing, but when your garden seat is less than a metre away from the next door's back garden and kitchen door, that's got to be done. So I have now moved the seat onto the decking, and put it in a place that is just about 2 meters from the borders. Now, I think you always say this is her trying to get somebody, another dog, to come
Yeah,
out.
she's
isn't it?
calling her friends, and actually that's her brother, who seemed to be ridiculously high. Or was it a cat? I honestly don't know whether that was a cat trotting down. I hope it was and not Jazz. You
If
never
Jazz
know.
being my assistant's dog, but no, you don't know indeed.
I think she might have just missed a cat, but she knew there was one there at some point, so she's still looking for it. She tends to be very forgiving about garden fence walks, although she does like to keep an eye on things and just make sure it doesn't come back again.
Well, let's be fair, Judy. She actually staggered outside the back door and hasn't bothered to go any further.
Well, there's that.
I mean, she's looking round,
Yeah,
which
she's
is great.
look, she's moving. She's moving. She's going forward. Oh yes, the things have moved. What I don't know what's moved. Something's moved. Oh yes, there's a, oh gosh,
Yes,
I'm going
best to
back
go
now.
back in,
Yeah,
yes.
it's too much. It's just too much.
So, yes, not exactly the most exciting thing in the world, but I don't know. I think I've been really struggling the last few days with that kind of sense of lockdown is not over for us. And the news has not really been incredibly reassuring about how long people in the shielding group realistically are going to have to take precautions. But it's good to be able to look at the garden from the inside, and that's really what I've done. I've kind of turned it round as much as I can so that we can see it better.
I mean, I think it looks really attractive. I mean, I think even being able to look at that, it's. I mean, it might be the kind of the lens that the camera you're using distorts quite how big it is, but it looks bigger than you describe it. And the sun out there always seems to be jolly green and creative looking.
Thank you. Well, yes, and I think it's just that sense of not being able to really kind of sit out there for any length of time. And yeah, I think I really appreciate having it. But I think, as we've talked about before, and particularly during Mental Health Awareness Week month, it is tough if you're shielding in particular. It's tough if you're not shielding and you've lost your job or you're having to use food banks. We have to be kind to ourselves and say it's okay to be struggling sometimes. And sometimes just looking out the window at the sky can be enough. It didn't really tell us one thing or the other, as some Swithens, did it?
Not really, no.
It keeps looking like it's going to rain, but it hasn't. So I think we should move on to our weekly sporting and gaming section. We start off, as we said earlier, with Clockwork toys racing each other to see whose teddy can wear the medal. For some strange reason, the Paralympians over in the West Midlands always seem to win. But introduce your bear first, Robin.
So this is Olivia. Olivia is one of Emily's. Well, nearly all the teddies we've looked at are Emily's, but because they're not something I've kept. I did have a teddy for a long time called Tinkerbell, but not anymore. I don't know why it was called Tinkerbell because it was a cat with no legs. But there you go. So,
Because she had to fly everywhere.
well, I guess so. Could be.
So there you were, you all saved up, clubbed together, got him an Apple Watch, and what he actually needed was a teddy. Well, I had my old pink Ted so maligned last week that he's retired, and Anna the ballet bear has come out for a second shot. So I think the way we did it last week was you looked for the toy that was in my right hand or the toy that was in my left hand.
Yeah.
So
So
what's
we're going with your right hand this week.
Your right hand as we look at it, which will, who knows?
the
The one that's on the right of the frame as we watch as they leave your hands.
All right. Well, I'll leave you to do the commentary. In terms of the audio description, I have a very small landing. We race Clockwork toys up it. They make a strange noise, which you can hear. You can usually see me kneeling on the floor, putting the toys down. The toys sometimes coming towards you, sometimes going off in their own direction. There's some bookshelves behind, and it makes a kind of strange rattly noise. In fact, I'm going to give you Anna because I realised I was just squashing her trying to operate this at the same time. So over to you for the commentary.
Okay, so another exciting race to take place.
Starting
Paul,
out with on the right,
Yeah.
with the green.
the green something or other. We believe it could actually be.
In first or second. We're
Yeah,
not
at this
entirely
point,
sure.
I know it's there is possibly some interference going on there. But yeah, so sorry. I mean, it's very difficult to tell really because I mean, thankfully it's not raining. Oh yeah, the green one. Sorry,
the green has gone further.
yeah. So the one that was released from the right hand as we were looking at the screen has indeed.
My right hand, Robin. My right hand.
Yes, which is the green one. So I think we won.
See if we can rewind this to where what came out of my hand.
The
Just-
green one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Released from your right hand was the green worm.
The green.
No, that's my left hand.
But it looks like you're
On
right.
the right on the screen, it's the right.
On the screen, it's the right one. I mean, I have to.
Thank you, Julie.
Like agreeing with them, but
The green.
I did. I was very specifically said the right hand as we look at it.
And we called the colour at the start as well once we could see. So
This is
victory is ours once again.
yeah, well, it was definitely the right hand on the screen, and that was the green one.
But that's not what I meant at all. I meant my right hand, as you see it on the screen. This is my right hand, and
I'm sorry,
I'm going
but
It's 3
here
against
we
1.
go. Yeah, it is.
We win.
We win. Next, we'll have to go back to colours, you see, because that's a lot less.
well, no, because you worked
ambiguous.
out which colours are the quickest ones. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go through our captions at the end. Thank you for Julia from Global Real-Time Captioning, who is typing away at the moment, doing our live captions underneath on the website. When you watch this as a recording on YouTube later, it will have those captions embedded. But once I get that transcript through, I'm going to find out exactly what you said, and if necessary, we'll be taking it back.
The record shows right hand side of the screen.
It was, I must say, yeah, that's what I understood. Sadly.
Well, it depends which screen you're looking at, because
The one in front of us.
So I think without further ado, Josh, we'll hand over to you, because when it comes to anything sport and gaming, we defer to the West Midlands.
Yeah, so the first thing I was going to talk about this week is that last week on Thursday, I believe, was the Inspiration Games, the highlights of which were shown on Saturday afternoon on BBC One, which there'll be an iPlayer link available after the show on the highlights page for that. Which, whilst it was a real sporting event, it was a virtual real sporting event almost, in that there was 3 teams. There was a Team USA, a Team Europe, and a Team the rest of the world. And they competed in 7 different venues around the world, predominantly in the US and Europe. It was all kind of hosted from Zurich, with kind of very complicated method. They were all the timing guns were all synced up from Zurich. When they started it in Zurich, it started everywhere else, and then there was kind of live feeds coming in from 3 different venues, which they then kind of synced up and then replayed, so that the people at home that were watching it watched the race synced, so that whoever crossed the line first won, obviously accounting for the kind of signal delay. Don't know how they did that. We had enough trouble syncing it between Newham and Birmingham.
How rude.
So yeah, that. So and it was it was bizarre, but it was kind of quite cool to see some kind of, you know, actual real athletics, you know, going on. There were a few hiccups and things which I think kind of has to be expected. But I thought, you know, the technology that must kind of go into that is, and you know, they were all kind of watching each other on live streams, not necessarily in the running races, but kind of they're doing high jump and long jump and things. So they'd run, they'd do their jump, and then they'd go back to their own little station that had kind of clean, you know, hand sanitation stuff and cleaning things, and a kind of iPad or laptop for them to then watch everyone they were competing against do their jumps all over the world. And it was just really cool to kind of see that kind of.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I mean, we've said before, you know, we're not a taking part in sports show, but we are interested in the drama of what's available to watch. And it's not that we don't want to take part, but obviously right now it's a little bit difficult. I know you guys are doing all of your land work, but our wheelchair dance company is pretty much kind of had to hang up its costumes for at least another 12 months, I should think. Do you think they were seriously trying to experiment to see if sporting events could take place competitively? I mean, it sounds fascinating, but the thing that comes back to me is that if you've got different wind conditions and different temperatures and slightly different surfaces, and I'm not even a sports person,
Yes.
it's quite difficult to say that it's fair.
Yeah, that is one of the things that I was thinking when I was watching it, that you had someone running in Florida in the sunshine with a crosswind. You had somebody running in LA with a tailwind, which is when it blows from behind you. And then someone else was running in Papendal in the Netherlands in the pouring rain and headwind. And typically you'd think the person that's running with the tailwind would win because the wind pushes you along. It helps, you know, certainly in athletics and over the shorter things, you know, altitude and wind speed is the difference between world records and not. So there are definitely issues. I think if it was any kind of major things like a world championships or an Olympics, it wouldn't work. But I think it was in a way to try and get athletes competing, get some sport for people to watch kind of in an entertainment way.
I think it sounds really exciting. And like I say, you know, it may be the only way that some people can seriously compete for the sort of coming time. I mean, it certainly sounds, I don't know, very dramatic, but I wonder whether there's some sports that it would work better for than others. We loved the drama of the Winter Olympics and indeed the Winter Paralympics in Seoul a couple of years ago. But when you looked at the sledging or whatever it is they call it, but if it's essentially kind of zooming down on a tiny little tea tray at the speed of light, the difference in the top 10 were always fractions of a second. And you think a fraction of a second is so easily explained by a different temperature, different kind of air conditions that, yeah, I don't think it's going to be a long term solution, but it certainly does sound fascinating. I think they re showed it on the BBC on Saturday afternoon, although I didn't actually watch it.
Yeah, there was a kind of 1 hour highlights program on Saturday. Yeah, I think for things like kind of pole jump, pole vault, it's probably less. I don't know exactly. I mean, wind speed will still affect it, but I think much less than kind of 100 or 200 meters. The other challenge is in the 200. The guy that originally won it, who is the world champion, accidentally started 15 meters past where he should have done. And to be fair, I mean, it would have been quite interesting to see what he would have ran if he'd started from the right line, because he was running really fast. But he broke Usain Bolt's world record by quite a margin. And then when everyone kind of went, that doesn't seem right, and he kind of went back and looked, and he was like, oh, we've done a bit of an oopsie here. So we've accidentally started from the wrong line. Which kind of, when you're in an athletic stadium by yourself, one of the challenges, I guess. But I mean, other than that, it all kind of ran quite smoothly. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of what happens.
It certainly sounds very very much like something that could be done in the music business more easily.
Yes.
I think bringing bands together from different continents to then stream concerts might well be something that people do in the future rather than, just the hassle if you come from Australia of having to go into quarantine when you get back and having to pay for the quarantine and everybody you've got to take with you. Isn't it easier just to kind of stream your bit in to the States or wherever?
Yeah, and it's kind of what we were talking about on Monday with kind of theatre and shows and things, that there isn't really any kind of good rationale for why not. There's plenty of good reasons for why, and there's not really
Streaming to an audience.
Yeah, in terms of kind of live streaming things, they could have argued before lockdown, it's the infrastructure and how is it going to work live streaming to all these different things, which is kind of a bit of a rubbish excuse anyway because it's already done extensively. But I think there's so many possibilities with the internet for sport or art or whatever. But yeah, hopefully kind of they get followed.
I agree, but I think what you said that I find really surprising and very impressive was the synchronized start, because there's always a time lag, and sort of like to be able to have the technology to beat that is really impressive.
Yeah, I have no idea how they did that. That when they pulled the starting gun in Zurich, it simultaneously started every other venue.
Amazing.
Which I don't know how, unless
Well, they obviously were using...
kind of the international athletics have secretly kind of developed some sort of quantum, not told anyone the speed of light.
I would imagine they kind of use fiber optics rather than
Yes,
rather
is
than.
Yes. Well, we
is
might
the speed of light.
research
But anyway,
later before we get too bogged down because time's ticking on and Josh might have more to say. I believe there's some kind of clock that sounded that everybody kind of sinks into that comes from Switzerland, but I'll leave you to look that one up.
yes.
What's happening with gaming?
Gaming in a similar way to the kind of film industry, not a lot really goes on at this time of year in terms of gaming. All of the kind of, they call them AAA games, all the kind of major titles, typically come out in kind of September, October, basically in the run up to Christmas. It's when they make their most money because everyone wants them as Christmas presents and things like that. And it kind of leads into the award season for computer games, in the same way that films come out around the window with kind of Oscar nominations and things. So yeah, kind of June, July, August, you don't really get kind of many big games coming out. So there's not a huge amount of kind of gaming news.
Do a lot of conventions because it's school holiday.
To be honest, I don't really follow a huge amount of kind of gaming convention-y things. I know there's E3, which is kind of the main one, which is some point in the summer. I'm not entirely sure when the dates are. But kind of it links in with sport. Next week would have been the start of the Olympics. If it had all kind of not gone slightly sideways in terms of the year. So what we're planning to do over the next couple of weeks, across various games we have in terms of basketball and golf and shooting and things, is kind of do lots of different Olympic competitions or Olympic sports in various different games that we have.
Well,
and we're probably going to add motor racing. It's not an Olympic sport. We might shoehorn it in so that we can do some.
I think that the Sutton Coldfield office and the Newham office of Unlocked should both get copies of the Olympic Games game, and then we can not come. I don't know if you can do it collaboratively.
Yeah, we'll play those as well.
We can beat you.
You're just planning already.
Yeah, we can.
No, that actually we could then, and you could become you might be the best digital high jumpers, for example, and while we might be the best digital swimmers. So I think we should both get copies of that, and then
Frightening if we were the best digital swimmers.
and then it would be, but and then over the like in a 2 weeks time, which would be like the middle of the or towards the middle of the Olympics, we could be coming back and reporting on our
We can have our medal table.
on our progresses.
Virtual Olympic
Well,
medal
I'm
table.
going to suggest a slight variation on this, which is, of course, it would also have been the Paralympics. We would have been having a very different summer because, in fact, our dance company would have been dancing at the handover ceremony down in Aylesbury. But
So
never
just
mind.
before we forget that, there is
It's,
some Paralympic anime
yeah,
cartoons.
there's NHK News or NHK World News, which is the official broadcast partner for the Paralympics in Japan. And kind of animation and anime is really big in Japan. They've created this animation Paralympics crossover kind of event where they're working with the top kind of animators and draw artists and kind of pop singers in Japan to create kind of stories called Who's Your Hero or Who's My Hero. And it's kind of stories of different Paralympic events. So they've done blind football or side football. They've done athletics. They've done rugby so far, and it's really cool.
And football, yeah.
So
Yeah, you
I
said
should
that.
have said before, we have, for anybody new to the show, on our website, we have a page called Highlights and Links. It's just under the main link for Together Unlock TV, and there's also a link from the main show page. We'll be putting all of the links up there, any videos we've shown. So I suggest, yes, we will take up your games challenge, but we will extend it to the end of the Paralympics, which will give us about 6 weeks instead of 2 weeks. And we will ask the West Midlands office to do us a section for our highlights and links page. We'll announce it properly next week, which has got the links to the cheapest versions of these online games for different platforms. And I would imagine for quite a few, there is some free versions available for different platforms. On Friday, it's dressing up to go out to stay in day, where we all dress up to go out to stay in. It can be a real event, a real place, or wholly made up. We would love to see your photos and videos of you dressing up to go out to stay in, whether you want to go to the opera, the moon, or the bottom of the sea. Please send us your anything that you've got that you would like us to show, including your poems, your artwork, and your films, anything you've made in the Join In From Home programme, to info or indeed TV at together2012.org.uk. What else have we got coming up on Friday? We've got something for the weekend where we will recommend far more things that you can do online and offline at home over the weekend. And indeed, it will be another opportunity to hear Robin, also known as Angry Fish, play us out as usual. I've got contributions from Act Up Newham. I've got contributions from Pamela Hillier, has sent us in some work. So there's going to be quite a packed show on Friday. Today, after we've just said a few goodbyes, we're going to play out, as we said at the beginning, with a film poem called Together from Richard Downes. So we'll say goodbye from East London.
We'll say goodbye from Sutton Coldfield and see you Friday.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Bye.
And how do they? This is a poem called Together, and it's for Together 2012. It requires a little bit of audience participation. I'm going to ask you if you remember an advertisement which always ended with a man saying, "We want to be together." He said it in a Brummie accent. I'm a black country man myself, but I can do a little bit of Brummie. We want to be together. So see if you can say that in a Brummie accent. We want to be together. I'm confident that you can. So now I'm going to start my poem. is called together. In a Brummie accent, like in the advert, everybody say, we want to be together. Together. We want to be together. Together we stand together. Stand together together. Sit to face each other, facing one another. Talk about the weather. Like strangers becoming friends, friends becoming lovers. In a Brummie accent, everybody's got to say, we want to be together. Together we mingle together. Together we become like one another. Together we speak for one another. Speak for your comrades, brother. Like you alone can group together. You and me will work this thing together. When, in a Brummie accent, everybody says, we want to be together. Together. Like this, together, like that. Two words that go together. Together we get it together. Today's the same, tomorrow's a change. Come on, let's get it together. Come on, let's get our world together. All together in a Brummie accent say, we want to be together. And let's say it now, together. In our own time, but together, like it's a new rhyme forever. We'll speak these lines forever. It will be sounding fine together. We'll get along strong together. Everybody in a Brummie accent say, thank you, you've got it. Bye.